In an era of information overload, making sense of complexity matters more than ever. Today with us we have Mr. Vishal Parekh, who is the head of corporate business, Asia and emerging markets for Thomson Reuters. Join me in the conversation. Thomson Reuters is an AI and technology company empowering professionals with trusted content and workflow automation to know now and navigate what's next. In times of constant change, the world looks to professionals to lead. But as complexity grows, even professionals risk being overwhelmed. Thomson Reuters clarifies today's complex landscape with AI and technology, deep subject matter expertise, and content the world has trusted for over 150 years, giving professionals the confidence to know today, navigate tomorrow, and lead a fast evolving world. Thomson Reuters empowers professionals to reduce inefficiencies so they can do more of the work that matters, act decisively to add greater value for critical stakeholders, and anticipate future challenges to face the unexpected. As the future arrives faster than ever, Thomson Reuters stands along with professionals ready to fulfill their purpose to inform the way forward.
Marksman Daily presents C-Suite Conversations.
Mr. Parekh, thank you so much for giving us your time and welcome to the C-Suite Conversations.
Thank you so much, SAKSHI, for having me here. It's a privilege.
Sir, talk to us about your career journey, the previous work that you have done and how you landed up here at Thomson Reuters.
Yeah, I've landed up here at Thomson Reuters since several years now, almost 16 years and counting. So it's been a really long journey. But that is not how I started. Definitely I started off as a chartered accountant, as a typical Indian grown male, where either it's an engineer or a chartered accountant. I chose the chartered accountancy field thanks to my dad, who advised me in that direction. One thing which I never thought I would say is I'm going to be here for 16 years, right? But I think the whole journey has been more about constant change. So over 16 years, I think I've had more than a dozen jobs. Which is, I think, why it's been so refreshing, because every time I've changed not only geographies between North America, Brazil and South America, and now in India, but also kind of my roles from a finance background to completely shifting to business management and sales now. So I think it's been a real transition, and the journey has given me a lot of learnings over time, and I think the learnings never stop. So they continue to keep putting me on a very high learning path, especially the last 4 or 5 years as I've transitioned from finance to sales. So it's been rewarding.
Totally, I can see that smile on your face. It says a lot. 16 years in an organization, especially at this point of time, is a lot. What is that one thing that kept you going?
So with Thomson Reuters specifically, I think it's been just about the sheer ability to keep your network within the organization, but also keep getting newer experiences, right? Sometimes I do wonder if I have ADD. I cannot stick to the same thing for a long time. I don't think that's a problem. Thankfully, my wife doesn't have to worry about that. But overall, I think generally I have an issue around kind of staying in the same job for too long. And I think with Thomson Reuters, I think with any organization where you've been there for a long time, if you have opportunities to change and switch and get better experience, and that's what you enjoy, right? Because not everyone enjoys this. Then to have your network and preserve your network, but at the same time get newer experiences, the best of both worlds in my opinion.
So you don't like monotony as such?
If you are kind of happy to get yourself uncomfortable and do something different, and you enjoy that, and it doesn't eat you up and consume you, then you're actually very, very well positioned for such kind of a journey. But if you don't, then there's definitely a lot of ways to be successful in your journey.
As a leader, there are certain decisions that you need to take, which involves a lot of risk, and also that it might affect people, especially in your team or otherwise. How do you balance that, or how do you come to a conclusion that works for all?
That's a brilliant question. I mean, it is a question most of us, I feel like, have to take a call on. And I think the one comfort I have is that when you take a call on some of these things, right, you have to know that there can be a call that can go wrong. As long as you're comfortable with that, and as long as you've gone through the years of experience where you realize that nothing can eventually kill you, it'll just make you stronger, that there's a lot more comfort and confidence you have when you're making that decision. So I think, in this very volatile world, I feel like if you have your bearings right and you have your moral compass right, and you know that this is one more step in a journey which can falter possibly, and I will not completely fail after that. There'll be a recovery period and we'll get back to another journey which could be even better. I think it becomes a lot easier to make some of these decisions, because otherwise the burden just weighs you down and it becomes hard to kind of, give a direction to your people as well, right? Because eventually when you're not making a decision, you're basically stalling. And when you stall, nothing comes good out of that, for sure.
So Mr. Parekh, as a team lead, how do you make sure that your team is growing and it is productive? At the same time, there's a lot of trust in them. So give us your insights on that.
I feel like that's compounded, that the value of that pillar has compounded multifold over the last 5 years, especially since COVID, and there's less FaceTime. So there's a lot more, whatever little FaceTime or connection we have. One of the key elements to kind of infuse trust and enforce trust is communication, right? And I think we, all of us, including myself, underestimate the power of communication, underestimate the preparedness of being a good communicator, right? And I think that's something which I continue to strive to learn. I feel like I'm very, very far behind in terms of efficient communication, because I think the second you feel like you are at the pinnacle of an efficient communication, everything should just start working like clockwork, right? And unfortunately, it doesn't happen around me. So clearly, I'm very far off. But I think it's there was a Harvard Business Review research which said that almost 60% of the employees find communication lacking and direction lacking from their management. And funny enough, 70% of the managers don't feel confident and comfortable communicating with their employees. So you can see this is not, if people feel like you're alone, that you're not being able to communicate effectively, it's a very large problem. Almost 2/3 of your workforce faces that problem. And I feel like the more you communicate, and the more you communicate with authenticity, where you're actually genuine as opposed to communicating a regurgitated story, the more powerful your trust and that oneness in the team becomes. I was traveling last 2 weeks on holiday to Egypt and Greece, and it just struck me that these individuals 5,000 years ago were just so strong as one individual to change the legacy of the entire civilization. And I asked the question, some of the guides there, right? Like, what was the secret behind some of these guys? Like, the way it was all about the leadership and trust in their kind of second tier of leaders, right? And then that kind of infused in a third tier of leaders, because eventually that one individual could not build a pyramid or a massive tombstone. That's just not possible, right? And I think that's why I feel like that's such a cornerstone, fundamental pillar of leadership. And that is driven by communication, because without efficient and authentic communication, there's no trust, which can never happen.
So talking about bridging the communication gap, how do you manage to do effective communication externally when it comes to vendors or clients?
I mean, listen, I think just being at Thomson Reuters gives you a lot of pressure of communicating externally, because our tagline, our purpose statement is inform the way forward, which means that it's all about communicating and communicating the right things. Try to be as clear about our communication, be it about our products, about our roadmaps, as well as the way we communicate about competitors in general as well. We're very, very conscious of that. So that's something which is always hard, because you're in the business of sales, you want to win, but at the same time we do not engage in customer competitor bashing and so on. So I think it's about trying to strike that balance and infuse that trust within the community you're serving or the industry you're serving, in terms of how do we carry on our business with the right ethical and moral compass? How do we ensure that we treat our customers well? How do we protect data, especially in today's world, like data security? All that is becoming a really important factor. I feel like that's, again, very important to make sure that you have that perception of trust. And perception of trust is obviously created by a lot of hard work and foundation of years of building that perception, right? And I think that's the one fortunate thing we all have, is that from Thomson Reuters perspective, there is that perception of trust, because we are in the business of news. We are in the business of informing, as I said, the way forward for professionals. And that's something which is embedded into our trust principles. And that really helps make the job a little easier.
Easy. Totally. And also, with you reiterating the word trust again, I think it's like an affirmation saying, you should have faith, not in oneself, in the organization, but externally also. And that is how, you become successful in life.
No, absolutely.
So, okay, that brings me to my second last question. When it comes to decision making, I'm going to put you in a little bit of a situation here. What do you choose, EQ, IQ, or a mix of both?
I think, I went to business school, and during my time there was a dean who I deeply respect. His name is Dean Bill Boulding. And he came up, we were having these conversations, and he came up with this very interesting concept, right? And to your point, I'm going to answer your question, but in a little bit of a twisted way. In some ways, there's no escape from IQ and EQ going together. I think to answer your question very directly, there is no decision that can be made with just IQ or EQ. I think in today's world, we need a little bit of both. But the reason why I brought up Dean Bill Boulding was that he came up with something very interesting called a DQ, which is a decency quotient.
Okay.
It's not something which is very commonly used, but I felt that it was quite deep, because there's obviously the EQ aspect of it and IQ aspect of it, but in all of this, do you genuinely care, right? Like, I think, sadharan admi, right? Like, a decent man is something which is considered very ordinary, but that's actually exceptional in today's world, in my opinion.
Oh, yes.
Right? Decency is one of the most fundamental behavior traits which is missing in most individuals. And I think when he says decency, he means by genuine care for your organization, for your employees, and for the decisions you make. When you're making the decision, and that kind of connect that with what my mom used to say, where don't do anything to others which you don't want to be done to yourself, right? I think it's not something which is her invention, but it's something which she used to always say. You combine all of these things together, right? And if this is how you're wired, you know that one, you'll make a decision which you feel is in the best interest. Whether it turns out to be or not, fate will, only time will tell.
Clear.
Your conscience clear. You can sleep well at night, right? And the fact that you believe that you're making the right decision gives you a lot of confidence in executing that decision. Gives you a lot of conviction that you will execute. There will be no doubts that creep up. And I think that makes a huge difference in terms of success and failure, because a majority of success and failure, the distinction between that is the conviction and the confidence with which you execute. And I think that makes a big difference. So I think in some ways, if I answered your question in
yes,
direct way, I don't know.
I'm totally satisfied, and thank you so much for this learning. This is something I'm taking back personally.
Yeah.
What is the piece of advice or words of wisdom you like to give the aspiring leaders?
See, I'll tell you, there's a lot of conversations about the shadow of a leader, right? I've always expanded that to be a shadow of anyone. And people coming in, the reason why I say that is that people coming in, the advice I'd give is that even as a shadow of an employee, shadow of a friend in an organization or outside, I think those are all very important things that we tend to ignore and take very lightly. Now, I'm not saying be a very serious person and take everything seriously, but at the same time, always think about the consequences of some of the actions you take, right? I think you have that good moral, ethical work compass, good work ethic. You automatically will be remembered, not just by your as a leader, remembered by employees, but also as an employee. That there was this one guy or girl who was just always on the ball, right? Who was always kind of willing to go that extra mile. I think that is what shapes your career in the future, because that is hard to forget. Unfortunately, that trait is still not very common, which is why it's hard to forget. And I think that would be my one simple advice, is that always think about the shadow you cast, not just as a leader, but also as an employee, and kind of the way you'll impact people when they think about you 15 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line.
Thank you so much for being so authentic and not mincing words. I can't be thankful enough.
No, thank you for this opportunity.
We've journeyed through Mr. Vishal Parekh's leadership style, what it takes to gain trust and build an organization. Remember to stay authentic and being honest with yourself. Until next time.